Ramsey was an American child beauty queen who was killed at age 6 in her family's home in Boulder, Colorado on the night of December 25th, 1996. Her body was found in the house's basement about 7 hours after she had been reported missing. She had sustained a broken skull and a garrote was tied around her neck. The autopsy report stated that JonBenét's official cause of death was asphyxia by strangulation associated with craniocerebral trauma. Her death was ruled a homicide. The case generated worldwide public and media interest, in part because her mother, Patsy Ramsey, a former beauty queen, had entered JonBenét into a series of child beauty pageants, exposing her to possible predators. The Boulder police initially suspected that a long handwritten ransom note that was reportedly found in the home had been written by Patsy, and that the note and appearance of JonBenét's body had been staged by Patsy and her husband John in order to cover up the death. In 1999, the police and district attorney both said that JonBenét's brother Burke, who was 9 years old at the time of her death, was not a suspect. JonBenét's parents gave several televised interviews, but resisted police questioning except on their own terms. In 2013, unsealed court documents revealed that a 1999 grand jury had recommended filing charges against the Ramseys for permitting the child to be in a threatening situation. John and Patsy were also accused of hindering the prosecution of an unidentified person who had committed the crime of murder in the first degree and child abuse resulting in death. However, the DA determined that there was insufficient evidence to pursue a successful indictment. In 2002, the district attorney's successor took over investigation of the case from the police and primarily pursued the theory that an intruder had committed the killing. In 2003, trace DNA that was taken from JonBenét's clothes were found to belong to an unknown male. Each of the family's DNA had been excluded from this match. The DA sent the Ramseys a letter of apology in 2008, declaring the family was completely cleared by the DNA results. Others, including former Boulder Police Chief Mark Beckner, disagreed with exonerating the Ramseys, characterizing the DNA as only a small piece of evidence that was not proven to have any connection to the crime. In 2009, the Boulder police took the case back from the DA and reopened the investigation. National and international media coverage of the case focused on JonBenét's brief beauty pageant career, as well as her parents' wealth and the unusual evidence found in the case. Media reports questioned how the police handled the investigation. Ramsey family members and their friends have filed defamation suits against several media organizations. The crime is still considered a cold case and remains an open investigation with the Boulder Police Department. JonBenét Patricia Ramsey was born on August 6th of 1990 in Atlanta, Georgia, the younger of two children of Patsy Ramsey and John Ramsey. She had an older brother named Burke, born in 1987. JonBenét's first name combines her father's first and middle names, and her mother's first name was used as her middle name. She was enrolled in kindergarten at High Peaks Elementary School in Boulder, Colorado. Her body was found on December 26th of 1996 in her family's Boulder residence. She was buried at St. James Episcopal Cemetery in Marietta, Georgia on December 31st. JonBenét was interred next to her half-sister, Elizabeth Ramsey, who had died in a car crash nearly 5 years earlier at the age of 22. John Ramsey was a businessman who was the president of Access Graphics, a computer software company that later became a subsidiary of Lockheed Martin. His first marriage ended in divorce in 1978. In 1991, John had moved with Patsy, his second wife, and family to Boulder, where Access Graphics headquarters was located. Patsy Ramsey entered JonBenét in various child beauty pageants in Boulder, where she won the titles of America's Royal Miss, Little Miss, Charlie Fox, I probably fucked that way up, Little Miss Colorado, Colorado State All-Stars Kids Cover Girl, and National Tiny Miss Beauty. JonBenét's active role in child beauty pageants and Patsy's reported pageant mother behavior were reported by the media after the murder. In the summer of 1997, approximately 6 months after JonBenét's death, the Ramseys moved to a new home in Atlanta after a summer vacation retreat in Michigan. Patsy would die of ovarian cancer at the age of 49 in 2006 and was buried next to her daughter. Scott Gibbons, a neighbor, claimed that around midnight, while looking from his kitchen window, he saw the upper kitchen of the Ramsey residence to be lit up with lights on dim. Neighbor Melody Stanton reported that she was awoken shortly after midnight by the sound of a child's scream coming from the Ramsey residence. Patsy Ramsey reported that she found a 2.5-page handwritten ransom note on the kitchen staircase in their home. The note demanded a sum of $118,000 for JonBenét's return. John pointed out to police first on the scene that the amount was nearly identical to his Christmas bonus of the prior year, which suggested that someone who would have access to that information would be involved in the crime. Can you guys imagine getting an almost $120,000 bonus for Christmas? Christ. I would die of shock. I wouldn't even get to spend it. Anyway. And that was in 1996. Jesus Lord. I don't know. I'm in the wrong business, apparently. They also considered the possibility that the ransom demand was a reference to Psalm 118 and spoke to religious sources to determine possible relevance. The ransom note Escape from New York, Speed, and Dirty Harry have acceptance as sources. The ransom note was unusually long. The Federal Bureau of Investigation told the police that it was very unusual for such a note to be written at the crime scene. The police believed that the note was staged because it did not have any fingerprints except for Patsy's and authorities who handled it, and because it included an unusual use of exclamation marks and initialism. The note and a practice draft were written with a pen and notepad from the Ramsey home. According to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, there are indications that the author of the ransom note is Patricia Ramsey. However, the evidence fell short of a definitive conclusion. Michael Bodden, a board-certified forensic pathologist who had consulted with both sides of the case, said he had never seen a note like it in his 60-year experience, and that he did not think it was written by an outside stranger. A federal court ruled it highly unlikely that Patsy wrote the note, citing 6 certified handwriting experts. The court bemoaned the existence of self-proclaimed experts without credentials, trying to enter the case by accusing Patsy without scientific basis. The ransom note is as follows. Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring an adequate size attaché. Y'all, I can't read this time of night. To the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money, and hence a earlier pickup of your daughter. Any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. The 2 gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you not to provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You will be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies. You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement. We are familiar with their countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions and you stand a 100% chance constant scrutiny, as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good southern common sense of yours. It's up to you now, John. Victory. And it was signed SBTC. The only known people to be in the house the night of JonBenét's death were her immediate family, Patsy and John Ramsey, and their son Burke. The ransom note contained specific instructions against contacting police and friends, but Patsy telephoned the police at 5:52 a.m. She also called family and friends. 2 police officers responded to the 911 call and arrived at the Ramsey house within 3 minutes. They conducted a cursory search of the house, but did not find any sign of forced entry. Officer Rick French went to the basement and came to a door that was secured by an additional wooden latch at the top of the door frame. He paused for a moment in front of the door, but walked away without opening it. Why not? French later explained that he was looking for an exit route used by the kidnapper, since the wooden latch was holding the door closed from inside the house. The kidnapper could not have used this door and then closed the latch from the inside, ruling this out as a possible exit. JonBenét's body was later found behind that door. With JonBenet still missing, John made arrangements to pay the ransom. A forensics team was dispatched to the house. The team initially believed that the child had been kidnapped, and JonBenét's bedroom was the only room in the house that was cordoned off to prevent contamination of evidence. No precautions were taken to prevent contamination of evidence in the rest of the house. Meanwhile, friends, victim advocates, and the Ramsey's family minister arrived at the home to show support. Visitors picked up and cleaned surfaces in the kitchen, possibly destroying evidence. Boulder detective Linda Arndt arrived at about 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time in anticipation of receiving further instructions by the kidnappers. But there was never an attempt by anyone to claim the money. Why were they letting people go through the house cleaning it? Even if she had been kidnapped, that's an active fucking crime scene. They bungled that for sure. At 1 p.m., Detective Arndt asked John Ramsey and Fleet White, a family friend, to search the house to see if anything seemed amiss. They started their search in the basement. John opened the latch door, which Officer French had overlooked, and his daughter's body lay in one of the rooms. JonBenét's mouth was covered with duct tape. A nylon cord was found around her wrists and neck, and her torso was covered by a white blanket. John picked up her body and rushed upstairs. When JonBenet was moved, the crime scene was further contaminated, and critical forensic evidence was disturbed for the returning forensic team. Each of the Ramseys provided handwriting, blood, and hair samples to the police. John and Patsy participated in a preliminary interview for more than 2 hours, and Burke was also interviewed within the first couple of weeks following JonBenet's death. The autopsy revealed that JonBenet was killed strangulation and a skull fracture. The official cause of death was asphyxia by strangulation associated with craniocerebral trauma. There was no evidence of conventional rape, although sexual assault could not be ruled out. Although no semen was found, there was evidence that there had been a vaginal injury. Evidence also suggested that the paintbrush used in the garrote was also used for sexual assault. At the time of the autopsy, the pathologist recorded that it appeared her vaginal area had been wiped with a cloth. Her death was ruled a homicide. A garrote that was made from the length of nylon cord and the broken handle of a paintbrush was tied around JonBenét's neck and had apparently been used to strangle her. Part of the bristle end of the paintbrush was found in a tub containing Patsy's art supplies, but the bottom third of it was never found, despite extensive searching of the house by police in subsequent days. The autopsy revealed a vegetable or fruit material which may represent pineapple, which JonBenet had eaten a few hours before her death. Photographs of the home taken on the day when JonBenet's body was found show a bowl of pineapple on the kitchen table with a spoon in it. However, neither John nor Patsy said they remembered putting the bowl on the table or feeding pineapple to JonBenet. Police reported that they found Patsy Ramsey's fingerprints on the bowl. In December of 2003, forensic investigators extracted enough material from a mixed blood sample found on JonBenet's underwear to establish a DNA profile. That DNA belonged to an unknown male person and excluded the DNA of each of the Ramseys. The DNA was submitted to the FBI's Combined DNA Index System, CODIS, a database containing more than 1.6 million DNA profiles, but the sample did not match any profile in the database. In October of 2016, a report said that new forensic analysis with more sensitive techniques revealed that the original DNA contained genetic markers from two individuals other than JonBenet. James Kohler, who was the lead investigator for the DA's office, said that there were additional traces of male DNA found on the cord and paintbrush that Boulder District Attorney Mary Lacey did not mention, and that there were 6 separate DNA samples belonging to unknown individuals that were found by the test. Former FBI profiler Candace DeLong believes that the DNA, having shown up identically in several different places on multiple surfaces, belongs to the killer. Former Adams County, Colorado DA Bob Grant, who has assisted the Boulder DA's office on the case for many years, also believes that the DNA evidence is significant, saying that any resolution of the case would have to explain how the DNA showed up on several pieces of JonBenet's clothing. Forensic pathologist Michael Botten said, trace amounts of DNA can get on places and clothing from all different non-suspicious means. There is no forensic evidence to show that this is a stranger murder. Experts, media commentators, and the Ramseys have identified potential suspects in the case. Boulder police initially focused almost exclusively upon John and Patsy, but by October of 1997 had over 1,600 people in their index of persons of interest for the case. Errors that were made in the initial investigation complicated the resolution of the investigation and applicable theory. Those errors included loss and contamination of evidence, lack of experienced and technical staff on the investigation, evidence shared with the Ramseys, and delayed informal interviews with the parents. Lou Smith was a detective who came out of retirement in early 1997 to assist the Boulder County District Attorney's Office with the case. In May of 1998, he presented his findings to the Boulder Police with the other staff members of the DA's office, concluding that the evidence pointed away from the Ramseys. They were unable to successfully challenge the police department's belief that the Ramseys were guilty. The DA's office sought to take control of the investigation. Due to the animosity between the police and the DA's office and the pressure to obtain a conviction, Colorado Governor Roy Romer interceded and named Michael Caine as special prosecutor to initiate a grand jury. Two of the lead investigators in the case had opposing views. Both Lou Smith and Steve Thomas ultimately resigned. Smith because he believed that the investigation had incompletely overlooked the intruder hypothesis, and Thomas because the DA's office had interfered with and failed to support the police investigation of the case. A grand jury was convened beginning September 15th, 1998, to consider indicting the Ramseys for charges relating to the case. In 1999, the grand jury ruled a true bill to charge the Ramseys with placing the child at risk in a way that led to her death based on the probable cause standard applied in such grand jury proceedings. But Boulder County District Attorney Alex Hunter did not prosecute them because he did not believe that he could meet the higher standard of proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt that is required for a criminal conviction. Mary Lacey, the next Boulder County DA, took over the investigation from the police on December 26th of 2002. In April of 2003, she agreed with the federal judge who sat on a 2002 libel case that evidence in the suit is more consistent with a theory that an intruder murdered JonBenét than it was a theory that Mrs. Ramsey did it. On July 9th of 2008, the Boulder District Attorney's Office announced that as a result of newly developed DNA sampling and testing techniques, touch DNA analysis, the Ramsey family members were excluded as suspects in the case. Lacey publicly exonerated the Ramseys. On February 2nd of 2009, Boulder Police Chief Mark Beckner announced that Stan Garnett, the new Boulder County DA, was turning the case over to his agency and that his team would resume investigating it. Garnett found that the review of the case against the Ramseys. In October of 2010, Boulder police reopened the cold case. New interviews were conducted following a fresh inquiry by a committee that included state and federal investigators. Police were expected to use the latest DNA technology in their investigation. There was no new information gleaned from those interviews. It was reported in September of 2016 that the investigation into JonBenét's death continues to be an active homicide case per Boulder Police Chief Greg Testa. In 2015, Beckner disagreed with exonerating the Ramseys, stating, "Exonerating anyone based on a small piece of evidence that has not yet been proved to even be connected to the crime is absurd." He also stated that the unknown DNA from JonBenét's clothing has got to be the focus of the investigation at this point in time, and that until one can prove otherwise, the suspect is the donator of that unknown DNA. In 2016, Gordon Coombs, a former investigator for the Boulder County DA's office, also questioned total absolution of the Ramseys, stating, "We all shed DNA all the time within our skin cells. It can be deposited anywhere at any time for various reasons that are benign. To clear somebody just on the premise of touch DNA, especially when you have a situation where the crime scene wasn't secure at the beginning, really is a stretch." Stephen Pitt, a forensic psychiatrist hired by Boulder authorities, said Lacey's public exoneration of the Ramseys was a huge slap in the face to Chief Beckner and the core group of detectives who had been working on the case for years. There are two primary theories about the death of JonBenét. One is the family member theory, which posits that JonBenét was killed by one or more family members. The second theory is the intruder theory, which posits that an intruder committed the crime. Boulder police initially concentrated almost exclusively upon the parents. According to Greg McCary, a retired profiler with the FBI, statistically, it is a 12-to-1 probability that it's a family member or a caregiver who was involved in the homicide of a child. The police saw no evidence of a forced entry, but they did see evidence of staging of the scene, such as the ransom note. They did not find the Ramseys cooperative in helping them solve the death of their daughter. The Ramseys had said that their reluctance was due to their fear that there would not be a full investigation for intruders, and that they would be hastily selected as the key suspects in the case, according to the Daily Camera. John Edward Douglas, an American retired special agent and unit chief in the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation. John Douglas was one of the first criminal profilers and has written and co-written books on criminal psychology, true crime novels, and his biography. Regarding the case of JonBenét, Douglas contends that John and Patsy Ramsey did not kill their daughter. Of the case, he said, "Many crimes are tried in the court of public opinion long before they reach a court of law. But I know of no other case in which the majority of people have decided the solution based on case in the mainline media have let the tabloids take the lead and then reported on their reporting. And I know of no other case in which largely respectable television programs have tried to outdo each other in such a sensationalized case. One theory is that Patsy struck JonBenét in a fit of rage after a bedwetting episode and strangled her to cover up what happened after mistakenly thinking she was already dead. However, Patsy did not have a known history of uncontrolled anger. JonBenét's brother Burke Ramsey later said, "We didn't get spanked, nothing of the sort, nothing close, nothing near laying a finger on us, let alone killing your child." Theoretically, the strangulation could have been a red herring aspect to conceal other elements of the assault and killing. Burke, who was 9 years old at the time of JonBenét's death, was interviewed by investigators at least 3 times. The first 2 interviews did not raise any concerns about him. A review by a child psychologist stated that it appeared that the Ramseys had healthy, caring family relationships. In 1998, Boulder Police Chief Mark Beckner said during an interview with a news reporter that Burke Ramsey was not involved in the killing of his sister. In May of 1999, the Boulder County DA's office reiterated that Burke Ramsey was not a suspect. The investigators had never considered him as a suspect. The Ramseys offered a $100,000 reward in the newspaper ad dated April 27, 1997. 3 days later, more than 4 months after the body of their daughter was found, they submitted for the first time to a separate formal interviews at the Boulder County Justice Center. In 1999, Colorado Governor Bill Owens spoke out, telling the Ramsey couple to quit hiding behind their attorneys, quit hiding behind their PR firm. A Colorado grand jury voted in 1999 to indict the parents. The indictment cited 2 counts each of child abuse and said the parents did unlawfully, knowingly, recklessly, and I'm going to butcher that, something to do with, creating a felony, permit a child to be unreasonably placed in a situation that posed a threat of injury to the child's life or health, which resulted in the death of JonBenét Ramsey, a child under the age of 16. That train is loud as shit. I really hope you guys cannot hear that. Among the experts who testified in the case were DNA specialist Barry Scheck and forensic expert Henry Lee. On October 13th of 1999, Alex Hunter, who was the district attorney at the time, refused to sign the indictment, saying that the evidence was insufficient for prosecution. The public thought that the grand jury investigation had been inconclusive. The police and the prosecutors followed leads for intruders, partly due to the unidentified boot mark left in the basement room where JonBenét's body was found. Early persons of interest included neighbor Bill McReynolds, who played Santa Claus, Chris Wolf, a local reporter whose then-girlfriend reported him as a suspect, family housekeeper Linda Hoffman Pugh, and a man named Michael Heacoth, who died in an apparent suicide shortly after JonBenét's death. Hundreds of DNA tests were performed to find a match to the DNA recovered during her autopsy. involving the Ramseys' public identifying an early suspect in the case, Judge Julie E. Carnes wrote, "There is virtually no evidence to support Wolf's theory that the Ramseys murdered their child, but an abundant evidence to support the Ramseys' belief that an intruder entered their home at some point during the night of December 25th, 1996, and killed their daughter." Lou Smith, a detective in the case, assessed the evidence and concluded that an intruder had committed the crime. On the night JonBenét was killed, there had been 2 windows that were left slightly open to allow for electrical cords for the outside Christmas lights to pass through a broken basement window and 1 unlocked door. Smith's theory was that someone entered the Ramsey home through the broken basement window. Critics have questioned this theory because there was an intact cobweb in the basement window. The steel grate that covered the window also had undisturbed cobwebs, and the foliage around the grate had been undisturbed. There were also cobwebs in the tracks of various windows, and dust and debris that were on some windowsills. Smith believed that the intruder subdued JonBenét using a stun gun and took her down to the basement. JonBenét was killed and a ransom note was left. Smith's theory was supported by former FBI agent John E. Douglas, who had been hired by the Ramsey family. Believing the Ramseys were innocent, Smith resigned from the investigation on September 20th of 1998, 5 days after the grand jury was convened against the Ramseys. While no longer an official investigator on the case, Smith continued to work on it until his death in 2010. Author Stephen Singular, in his book Presumed Guilty, refers to consultations with cybercrime specialists to argue JonBenét attracted the attention of child pornographers and pedophiles affiliated with the child pageant scene. Singular further believes the investigation was overly focused on the Ramsey parents, hampering investigation into alternate scenarios, and the Ramseys were not responsible for the murder, other than perhaps unwittingly exposing their daughter to sexual predators. Singular speculates this scenario explains why the grand jury did not recommend indicting the Ramsey parents for murder, but for child abuse or endangerment, for placing their daughter in a risky situation. It was determined that there had been more than 100 burglaries in the Ramseys' neighborhood in the months before JonBenét's murder. There were 38 registered sex offenders living within a 2-mile radius of the Ramseys' home. In 2001, former Boulder County prosecutor Tripp DeMuth and Boulder County Sheriff's Detective Steve Ainsworth stated that there should be a more aggressive investigation into the intruder theory. One of the individuals whom Smith identified as a suspect was Gary Howard Oliva, who was arrested for 2 counts of attempted sexual exploitation of a child and 1 count of sexual exploitation of a child. Charges in June 2016, according to Boulder's Daily Camera. Oliva, a registered sex offender, was publicly identified as a suspect in October of 2002's episode of 48 Hours Investigates. The killing of JonBenét, The Truth Uncovered, broadcast by A&E on September 5th of 2016. DNA DNA and forensic scientist expert Lawrence Koplinski stated that, based on forensic DNA analysis of evidence, an unidentified male committed this crime. The DA's office investigating pedophiles indicated to former Denver prosecutor Craig Silverman that the district attorney's office followed the intruder theory. The Ramseys developed a relationship with DA Mary Lacey and her office, which was criticized by authorities such as the city's mayor, Leslie Durgan. Silverman said, "Once you have conceded the possibility of an intruder, I don't see how any Ramsey could ever be successfully prosecuted." Gordon Coombs joined the office as an investigator under Lacey when they were testing JonBenét's clothing for touch DNA. He also said that Lacey strongly supported the intruder theory and talked about it with the staff. Although he was not directly involved in the case, he said he was told not to voice opposition to the theory because he might lose his job. It just seemed weird, the whole premise of this attempt to influence the entire agency, he stated. False confession. John Mark Carr was arrested in Bangkok, Thailand on August 15th of 2006 following a false confession to murdering JonBenét. Carr, a 41-year-old school teacher, claimed to have drugged, sexually assaulted, and accidentally killed JonBenét. According to CNN, authorities also said they did not find any evidence linking Carr to the crime scene. In the confession, Carr had provided only basic facts that were publicly known and failed to provide any additional convincing details. The claim that JonBenét was drugged further cast doubt on the confession because the autopsy indicated no drugs were found in her body. Furthermore, Carr's DNA did not match the DNA found on JonBenét's body. There were multiple defamation suits, and the case is still clearly, cold, and no one's been charged. What do you guys think about this particular case? It's been going on for years, and they can say it was an intruder, but there was no evidence at all that somebody entered the house. There was a broken window, but if cobwebs and dust are undisturbed, nobody went through that window. So it begs the question, was it one of the Ramsey family members? Patsy is, of course, deceased. And I think Burke, her brother, was on Dr. Phil at some point, but this has still never been solved. I actually rode by the Ramsey house in Boulder while I lived in Colorado, and it is an eerie place for sure. Boulder is a little place, so it's not some, major metropolis of a city. But this is a case I'm sure all of you have heard